Hi everyone, and good afternoon, and welcome to our webinar and information session, providing information on the Scottish Government's access to Childcare Fund. I'm Svenja, I work for Children in Scotland, and I'm here with our Chief Executive, Jackie Brock. Children in Scotland are managing the access to Childcare Fund, so you can find all of the relevant and forms on our website, which is childreninscotland.org.uk. If you don't know anything about us, that's okay. We're a national charity. We're working to improve children's lives, and we're also a membership organisation, meaning that we're bringing together a network of people working with and for children, young people and families across Scotland and beyond, really. This information session will hopefully support you to understand the fund's priorities, help you consider whether you want to apply for the fund or not, identify which parts of your work are most relevant to the fund, and generally find out more about the application process. Before Jackie takes over to cover all of the things I just mentioned, just a few kind of housekeeping information. So this webinar will run for around 60 minutes. So we're aiming to finish at around 3 o'clock. Hopefully you're able to see Jackie and myself just now, as well as the presentation slides that have been shared. To mention, we cannot hear or see you, so you're in listen-only mode, but you can still engage and submit your questions and comments, which I'm sure you have quite a few, throughout this webinar using the questions box in your GoToWebinar panel or browser window that you're using. And as a kind of like test to see that this question box is working, if you just open that up or click into it and send us, I usually ask for people's locations, but I know everyone's going to be probably locally from Scotland, so I'm going to go with something different. If you could just send me your favorite ice cream flavor, that would be great, just to see that you can have access to the question box and that you can make a comment. And yeah, there's already some coming through. Brilliant. We have mint chocolate chip, a lot of mint chocolate chip here actually. Chocolate, citrus, sorbet, chocolate, brilliant. Okay, that's great. So I know that you can access that. And that's the platform to, yeah, just, you know, send us your comments and questions. And we actually have a few staff members here that will help with any kind of support questions and IT questions as well that you have. So if you get a response from my colleague Kat or Angela or myself, yeah, we're here to support you. Your questions or comments won't be visible other than to us, but we'll be taking notes of your questions and we'll try to answer as many of them as possible throughout this webinar. We'll also be sharing handouts and relevant links after the webinar, so there's no need to copy or screenshot the slides. I think most of the information you've probably already seen on our website, and I think on this current slide that you're seeing, you see the link as well as what information is already available. Given that running webinars or information session like this is still fairly new to us, we really value your feedback. So we'll be sharing a link to a feedback form at the end. I think it might be on this slide as well. You can see it, tiny writing at the bottom of that slide. We're using Menti as a platform to yeah, provide feedback evaluations. So if you take a note of that code and that web address or open that up on your smartphone already, you can provide us with some feedback. First of all, on the IT, the quality of the webinar, but also on the information shared. And you'll also be able to submit further questions or comments if you don't get a chance to ask them, you know, throughout this webinar. And alternatively, finally, it's also on this slide, we have an email address just for questions and queries about this fund, and it's access to Childcare Fund at childreninscotland.org.uk. Again, we'll be sharing this with you after this information session. And yeah, that's, I think, enough for me, and I'll pass over to Jackie, who'll tell you a bit more, and we'll get started, and I'll be back for some questions later.
Thanks ever so much, Svenja, and good afternoon to you all. I'm never sure if it's a good idea to admit to first times, but why not on this occasion? This is the first time I've given a webinar, and it's very strange looking at a screen of my of our slides, but not seeing all of you. And but Svenja, Kat and I, the team, we've talked about how we can make this as interactive as possible. So obviously using the question facility, please don't hesitate to come in and ask questions, and even use that to comment if there's anything that I'm not clear about or you want a little bit more detail on. Really, I'm really excited to have this opportunity to talk through what we're looking for in this round of the funding. And the comments and observations that you have are going to be really helpful for us in terms of shaping how we go forward and assess the applications, but also there will be a further round of funding we're not quite sure yet, but certainly I would imagine in the this financial year, but later on. So thanks ever so much for your interest, and I really hope that this webinar is hugely supportive and helpful for you in deciding whether or not you're going to apply and how you're going to pitch your application. So what I'm going to do is be really kind of be as straightforward as possible in the hope that that helps you. So we're just going to take each question and then each section when it gets to when it's a bit more detailed, just go through it really slowly, really question by question, and we'll pause a bit. Svenja will stay just a minute, Jackie. We've got some questions on that at any point. So please don't hesitate to come back. But and that's really all I'm going to do. Just essentially go through the application and hopefully be as clear as possible to make sure that you can give your best possible application. Okay. So if that's okay, what we'll do is just start off with some general advice, really, that's designed to give you a bit of an understanding about what the Scottish Government is aiming to achieve from allocating the funding. Really can't stress enough. Obviously, our information note, by the way, does summarise this, but please do familiarise yourself if you're not already with the Child Poverty Delivery Plan, because that's the money that the government has set aside for the overall delivery plan. The funding for this fund, this pot of money for the Access to Childcare Fund, has come from the government's whole child poverty programme. So really do look at the objectives for the Child Poverty Delivery Plan and get a real sense of the ambition that's set out in the Child Poverty Plan, for example, ending child poverty by 2030, and how that's achieved and what your particular contribution will be to that in your application. Equally, while it's in draft at the moment, the out-of-school care framework is a really, really thorough and thought through document that sets out the ambitions. Well, firstly, the importance and priority that the government and its partners and local authorities and elsewhere places on out-of-school care in and around the school day, but also weekends and also holidays. So really important, I think, to think about looking to those principles and how your application could support the development and the thinking of out-of-school and holiday provision. We're also suggesting, because you will see in the application, that in addition to looking at really good projects and proposals, the government and has asked us in the funding to look at how likely is it that this project can continue and develop and flourish. So its sustainability is going to be important. But the government also recognises that out-of-school care and holiday provision is really fragile at the moment, very much living from day to day, and obviously with COVID-19 has been really, really damaged by the uncertainty and the lack of funding and the uncertainty whether or not premises are going to be open and staff are going to be available, etc. So really thinking through what are going to be those key factors about your application that are giving you the best possible chance of sustainability over the longer term. And that's why one of the reasons anyway why we're suggesting have a look at your local children's services plan and see the extent to which that the Children's Services Partnership and by your local authority is really aware of the needs that out of school care and holiday provision can meet. You might not feel that there's enough priority given in that plan to out of school care, but even so, you can still, I think you can still look at the Children's Services Plan and think, okay, if they're concerned, for example, about lone parent families and minority ethnic families, I've got a project that is maybe only working with a small number of those families or not even at all. But I think over the longer term, if our project is successful, we would really be meeting the needs that have already been identified in our plan. And turning to that, the focus on the priority groups. Now that's because the particular 6 priority groups, they're mentioned at question 12 in particular, but that's because this is all focused around supporting the delivery of the government's child poverty delivery plan. So you really must ensure that you are highlighting your work already with your priority groups, with any one of those priority groups or a number of those priority groups. But absolutely critical that even if you're not quite ready to meet those particular priority groups' needs, but that your application, if a successful application, will absolutely be targeting those groups. And we've already touched on what we hope is helpful in terms of other supports to make sure that you get the best possible chance for your application form. So all the technical guidance and how to use the application form, etc., and what we're looking for is available in the technical guidance. So unless there are any questions, I'll move to going through the application form specifically, if that's okay.
Hi, Jackie. Yeah, we had a couple of questions already, which you touch upon later on, but I want to read them out just now so we don't. Someone's asking whether all grant recipients be required to be registered with the Care Inspectorate.
Okay.
One question, and somebody else is asking whether parents apply for this funding, or how do we establish the need?
Yeah, okay. Can I deal with the Care Inspectorate one just a little bit later under the question? I think it's certainly under section 1. So just because, I don't have to go back and forth to confuse anyone else, but I'll definitely answer that. And then parents, I think that's a really interesting one. So we've already had some requests from individual parents about whether they could access the fund. So for individual parents, this is not a fund for individual parents, and we've been suggesting that they could perhaps talk to One Parent Families Scotland or Citizens Advice Scotland or elsewhere where parents are needing to access financial support to access out of school care or holidays. So unfortunately, this fund is not able to support them. In terms of establishing need, that's a really, really good question. And we're very aware of the patchy nature of understanding what parents are looking for and what they need. And with the advice about you looking for the Children's Services Plan is I hope that most children's services plans, if not all of them, should have information in there about the needs of families and what is being looked for in terms of what's currently delivered locally and the ambitions locally to support parents more. Now, I'm aware that that might not be either as complete as we'd like, or potentially it might not give you the information that you might want for your application. And that's why we wouldn't in any way penalise you for not being able, for example, to refer to information that's already in your local area's Children's Services Plan, or any information that's locally that perhaps there's not enough information locally. But what I think I would urge you to do, and we will come to those more detailed questions, is tell us how you'd go about it. What's your experience already of working with parents and families, and tell us how you'd go about making sure that your application and the service that you're applying for and hoping to develop, that it would absolutely meet the needs of those parents within those priority groups. So I hope that's okay, but I think that that sort of theme will come back a little bit in some of the more detailed questions under section 2 and 3, if that's okay for now. Is that all right if I go on to section 1?
Absolutely, yeah, all good.
Okay, thank you. So section 1 is really pretty straightforward. Please make sure that the key contact for the application that you're making is the person who can pick up the emails or any correspondence that we have, that we might have with you throughout the process of the application and assessment, but also and also we want to make sure that obviously we inform you of success and also sadly if you're not successful. Okay. And then hopefully the name of the organisation and the address there, and equally the contact email address is critical for us to make sure that we can speak to you. Okay. And then, yes, telephone numbers, if you're willing to give us that just could be very helpful. Email is critical. Telephone number is desirable, if possible, to give us that. And the website address is helpful, but absolutely not essential, so don't worry about that. And in terms of your local authority area, again, one local authority that the project is going to be available for, where you're applying. In most cases, it will just be one local authority area for your project. We don't want you to exclude it if you think, actually, no, this is, I'm on a boundary between local authorities, or actually we're looking at our setting, our application, serving, being based in one area, but potentially working across to, we're interested in that. But perhaps put the main local authority area at this stage for that, where the project is going to be based. Pop the main one in, and then you can explain to us later around how you're actually going to perhaps use that base in that local authority area for wider work. Hopefully that's clear. And then there aren't many questions, if any, that we're saying this is an absolute requirement and you cannot proceed unless you give us your permission, but I'm afraid this is the one that we must have your permission to retain data to be used to contact you, because otherwise we just can't proceed to discuss the application or whatever. So hopefully that's fairly standard, and hopefully that's straightforward. Is that okay for now? In the absence of nothing, I'll move on. We'll come to the Care Inspectorate question shortly, but I just wanted to stress at the name of the project and the type of project, at question 5, that we obviously want to look at tick boxes as much as possible. It makes it a lot easier for us to go through the assessment, but here we were looking just to stress to you that this seemed fairly complete to us as a list, and do tick more than one. But obviously, if you just feel, no, actually it's not quite right, then please do use that other box to give us a very brief description. And then obviously later on in the application, you can tell us a bit more. Then the Care Inspectorate, no, absolutely, you do not need to be registered with the Care Inspectorate to make an application. So please do proceed, but there will be several registered projects that are applying, and that's just really helpful for us to register, to have that information that you are registered and your number. And some folk have already sent us in an application, in fact, and also a copy of the latest report, Care Inspectorate. So again, that's really, really helpful too, but it's background information for us, and it's helpful, but it will not either prejudice or favour your application. So please don't worry about that. Okay, and then talked a little bit already about the priority groups, but hopefully that's clear. As I said, it comes from the Child Poverty Delivery Plan, and that it's essentially asking you to tell us, you can tick as many groups as you like, but it's essentially that we want you to make sure that you're highlighting who's being targeted for, which groups are being targeted for your service. And again, later on in the application form, you can say a little bit more about how you're going to do that and why you feel that that's necessary. Okay, unless there are any other questions, I'll go to section 3.
Hey, Jackie, yeah, there's a few questions that have come through, no, in not a particular order. So
Okay.
one question is, can individual schools apply for funding?
Okay, what I've been saying, I've had quite a few calls about that and inquiries about that. And what we'd say is, yes, you can. But as you'll see later on in the detail, partnership, and I mentioned earlier, partnership is a really valuable criterion for success in the application. And that's because, well, that's largely because we don't believe any one provider can probably deliver a sustainable out of school or holiday provision. And probably a school will probably want to work with other partners in order to deliver their proposal. But certainly, if the school is going to be in the lead, and then the application is the lead partner, if you like, and then the application tells us a bit around partnership, that will be of great interest to us, certainly. And that's both primary, secondary, early learning childcare settings, and also special schools.
Thanks, Jackie.
Is that okay, Svenja? Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Regarding the care inspector information, someone was saying that they have 2 venues with 2 different care inspectorate numbers. Can they apply for both venues?
Can they both apply? I'm sorry, I was laughing. I shouldn't have laughed. Sorry, Svenja.
Can we apply for both venues is the question.
Okay, so 2 separate applications is absolutely fine.
Brilliant. Is it an application per service, or can you do an overall application for all services?
You can do either, and I would focus on the later questions. So very happy if you want to raise another question once we've gone through section 3. I suppose I can't stress enough that the government has asked us to look at both how each setting or each service, how successful that could be in terms of meeting needs of local communities, etc. So there's that. But what will really make the difference between applications, the successful applications, and those that don't just quite make it to the bar, are where projects agree. Well, you've got to agree to work together, as you'll see later in this. But essentially, how are we going to learn from this project? So in order to look at how we can make out of school care and holiday provision across Scotland be more sustainable. So government really, really want to learn from the successful applications, both the good and the bad. But that's really critical. So think about the application, whether or not it's about one project or whether it's, as you said, a combined application for several projects. Think about both what each of the components of the project will tell us and what we'll learn from and why they'll meet needs. but also think about in totality, what could this help tell Scottish Government and the wider system about what really would make a difference to making sure that out of school care and holiday provision could be delivered sustainably. So that wider learning to inform the development of out of school care and holiday provision is really important. So in essentially put in that application on the basis of what you think gives us all, but particularly the funders, the maximum amount of opportunity and learning about how we really develop out of school care and summer holiday provision. It's not summer holiday provision in the longer term. I hope that's clear. But again, do come back later on in the session if there's something not quite right, or that you just need a bit more reassurance on.
Thanks, Jackie. There's quite a few more questions. I think some of them probably will be answered a bit later.
Okay.
Just generally, again, about who can apply. Can limited companies apply for funding working in partnership with local charities or a local school?
Yes, they can.
Good. And could there be an application from a national body to coordinate and facilitate a service on behalf of a number of providers, for example, childminding?
Yes, there could.
Okay, cool. We'll leave the other questions until later, I think.
Okay, thank you. I should say, I think we have a couple of members from the Scottish Government coming through. So this is very much based on my understanding of the project. So I'm very happy if anybody from Scottish Government wants to come through. But so far the questions are asking, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to clarify those. And I think, you know, one of the great things about this fund and the remit that the government's given us is we can't stress enough the sort of breadth of opportunities that they want to give. So the various models that have just been asked about, you know, the government right now, I mean, I suspect the demand is going to be hugely over, you know, it's going to be a huge demand, but it's a great opportunity to look at different models, and that's the remit we've been given. So thank you very much for those questions that just illustrate the eligibility for that, for applying and then hopefully success. Okay, so hopefully I'll turn to the next slide, having talked about hopefully and resolve some of the care inspectorate and priority group questions, and then the funding issues. Now, what we've aimed to do here under the funding criteria is to give us enough information to help us assess whether or not we can afford to support the application, and very broad. So, and as you can see from question 11, the request, we can give a maximum of up to around £250,000 to be used by the end of March in 2022. So, and hopefully, and again, as we say here, we would obviously then work on a more detailed project plan with you around the phasing and sequencing of payments. We're very aware, given the speed and the tight timescale for this fund, that you know, the amount of funding requested and how it's going to be apportioned under these headings is clearly going to be a bit challenging. So we're just looking very broadly to get a sense of right now of what you think, of how you think this money would be apportioned out in relation to staffing, associated staffing costs, and then the running costs of the project. And we fully understand that you might not even have a site or a project base or whatever yet. So we understand it's going to be difficult. We also know that it might be that you need a bit of capital spending. Now, that amount of money, obviously, we wouldn't expect you to be looking at major capital works, but you might need to have some capital equipment, etc. So please give us as helpful, apportion out the total amount of funding that you're asking for, put it out in those, apportion it out in those 4 bullet points that we've put there under question 12. But we are going to be Children in Scotland is going to be working with you very, very closely throughout the course of your project. So please don't worry, we will absolutely be expecting monies to shift in and out of various budget headings, and we'll work with Scottish Government to look at any flexibilities as well. But at the moment, think about how much you can give us that's helpful and feels broadly realistic, but they will be a starting point for discussion if you're successful, rather than holding you to account at all to what you've put down here once. So please trust us that the relationship that we'll be developing with the applicants will not be lost or won in relation to whether or not you've stuck to the penny to the original apportioning of costs that you've put down under 12. Okay, shall I move to the next slide?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Good. So now the next couple of slides are really getting into the heart of the application, and what we've tried to do, hopefully you'll also see in the scoring criteria, is to give you a sense of where our priorities are and how you'll be assessed. So the way I would look at it, and I'm aware that many of you will be vastly more experienced in writing applications than I am, but let me just set out for you what I hope, what we thought would be helpful for you to chunk up exactly how you think your application will meet the criteria for the fund. So question 13 is really your opportunity to tell us about your proposal in as broad and ambitious terms as you are able to be, and talk to us about why you know it's needed, the role of out-of-school care, either it might be that that's your main work is out-of-school care and holiday provision, and that's great, and why you think it's important. Equally, it might be one of a range of functions that you currently deliver. But essentially what we're looking for here is tell us about the project, either the current project that you want to look at expanding or enhancing its quality in some way, or ensuring that it matches the needs of the priority groups that you're targeting in better ways. Or it might be expanding and building on what you're already doing. It doesn't really matter to us. For us, it's about how this application really tells us about that you understand and are committed to the role of out-of-school care and holiday provision for your priority groups. So you've got your 500 words, but hopefully that's broad. But obviously do bear in mind the need, the priority groups, and why your proposal why you feel your proposal is absolutely going to meet those needs. And if you also want to bear in mind what is it in your proposal that you think, if successful, really could make a difference for us all across Scotland in relation to strengthening out-of-school care and holiday provision as well. Okay, and then the following questions really just try to unpack aspects of that in a bit more detail. So the question 14 is about identifying and meeting needs. And we've touched already on and recognized that, in some areas it's quite patchy what we know about out of school, about the need for out of school care and holiday provision. and that's because we don't have systematic care, after-school care and holiday provision across Scotland. So of course the information and evidence is going to be patchy. But your project and your partners may well have information that, even if it's a small number of individuals, you can talk to us a little bit there about how you've noticed and are very aware of the needs within your current services or planned services. Hopefully you can draw on sources, as we've mentioned, from the Children's Services Plan or from other local partners perhaps that you're in touch with as well. And in many ways, the response to COVID-19 has also, I think, absolutely highlighted the importance of family support and service provision to families, and that might well be struggling for a range of reasons. So there may well be more immediate information, even if it's anecdotal, that can really help you answer this and demonstrate need. We've put a sentence in here, but we could have put it anywhere. But that last point about readiness to expand or set up, I think is important to say to you that while the government has been very flexible about wanting to learn and not exclude services that are either very small or not able to deliver at the moment for any reason, we don't want to exclude them at all, quite the contrary. But government is, especially in this round, very anxious to get things moving swiftly and able to support families very soon into the end of August, September, and certainly the October half term. So that kind of readiness. So if you feel that actually your application might raise some questions about how ready are we, then as much reassurance and information that you can put in to assure us that following receipt of funding, you're ready to go, that will be extremely advantageous there. I'll just say under question 15, and then I'll pause for any questions. This one is essentially looking at the quality of service that we're looking for, both in terms of evidencing that in terms of what you're currently delivering, or how you would make sure that the children and the families were receiving an excellent quality experience. It's really hard. There's a huge, it's very difficult to monitor and review and evaluate that. Some of you will have excellent systems. Some of you that are just getting going won't have that. And we're not looking for absolutely detailed information. We recognize that many of you are so busy delivering services that might not be available yet. Nevertheless, an awareness of how you know what equals the good quality of experience, and whether you've tested that or how you would test that if you had resources, and the systems that you will already have in place or would plan to have in place to make sure that you have a real alertness to making sure that your project continues to offer a quality experience and reviews its approach and perhaps modifies it as necessary. I think that it's that approach that we're looking for, as much as any sort of detailed systems information or evidence and surveys, etc. And as we've said here, the government has given us some funding to get alongside each of the successful applicants and work with you to look at your reviewing and monitoring systems and your quality improvement process as well. So again, it is not barring you at all from applying, because you will get support on the way. It's that openness and awareness of what makes a good quality experience, how you're already delivering it where possible, but how you would go on to deliver it and how you'd know it's the right experience. and that openness to those questions are what we're looking for. Hopefully that's as clear as it can be. Before I go on to the next slide, will I pause there for any questions or observations?
Yeah, Jackie, I think that'd be great. There's quite a few questions coming through at the moment, so I know we'll have some time at the end as well to go through the rest of them. But just going back, I think about a few more questions about, you know, who can apply and how does that application process look like. So someone's asking if we're using multi-sites for project, does it need to be separate applications per site?
If the proposal, again, we want to be as flexible as possible, but if the application is about how a number of sites will be brought together or will be unified by a particular approach, for example, shared support services, or children might be going to one site on a few days and families going to another site at the same time, you know, so if there's a sense that there is a unifying thread between a number of sites, I think, and that's where the application, the funding will be, that will contribute to that, so that unifying approach, then I think the best, the most successful approach for applicants is to have one proposal and talking about that capacity, I suppose, that comes from unifying a number of sites. If you're looking at providing similar services, for example, you know, out of school care on 3 sites, and you'll have a similar approach, but you know, they are essentially going to be standalone projects, then I suggest that you would look at individual applications for those, because there's nothing really unifying them, or that the funding certainly wouldn't be looking to unify, it would be looking to develop the strength of the individual setting or site. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much. Someone here is saying that they would like to work with their schools, but obviously they're now closed for the summer and it'll be quite difficult to get their agreement on a partnership. Is it okay to say that they would just like to work with the schools rather than saying that it's an agreed partnership?
Okay, yeah, that's a really interesting one, and clearly not ideal. I think we would want to, again, it's going back to that readiness point, and if for example if the applicant could quote, you know, promising conversations have already taken place with these 3 schools, we absolutely know we have a strong partnership already with these 3 schools, and the funding would really help cement that in these ways. And if you could show us a bit of a history, or certainly an awareness from either the school or the local authority that something has to be done to support families that are in these priority groups, that would help us. That would help persuade us, I think, that there's something there, and in terms of a viable application at this stage. But I think we would have to look at how realistic that was. So absolutely highlighting a positive relationship to date would be necessary for success, in my opinion.
Brilliant. What are the chances for small organizations to be successful while competing with big national organizations?
Yeah, I can understand, and you know, I can understand that there might be some skepticism from some of the small organizations. In my opinion, I think the small, locally based organizations are going to have a greater chance of success than the nationals. So I'm aware that I'm probably going to get lots of questions from the nationals now, but because of the nature of out-of-school care and provision and the existing relationships locally, and that readiness to expand and offer quality, I mean, that's, and their experience and track record. So to be honest, I totally respect the possible skepticism there, but that's my opinion. And I think that opinion is borne out by a lot of the ways in which we've written the application form, in terms of the strength of local partnerships and an understanding of the out of school sector and holiday provision. That's not to denigrate either nationals or smaller local ones, but certainly my opinion at the moment is that that local and smaller organisations are more likely to be successful in this round.
Brilliant. In terms of the projects, are there parameters around age? So can there be a specific, or can there be a project that is targeted at a specific age range?
Yes. Yes. Sorry, I'm not quite sure what the concern might be. So I just a short answer doesn't mean I don't want to be reassuring. Please believe me when I say it's about meeting need and targeting the priority groups. And within that, if your application is strong on those issues, the fact that, for example, you're confining it to, let's say, 5 to 10-year-olds is absolutely fine for us. And also, of course, because even if you're targeting it at a fairly narrow age group, the potential success factors for how we can learn about expanding over the longer term, that I've mentioned already, are still there. So a narrower criteria, a narrower targeting around age at this stage is absolutely fine.
Great, Jackie. And could it be gender specific as well?
For children, yes. It could be, and have a look at the families again, not wanting to potentially make comments around gender, but I think that some of the priority groups, and then within those priority groups explaining why you're highlighting either male, female, transgender, why you're addressing that need, and the information, the evidence for that is what we're looking for. That sounds ideal.
And thank you. Someone just asked you to expand on something you mentioned earlier about expert advisors and working in collaboration with them.
Okay.
What you mean with that?
Yeah, sure. Excuse me. So the successful applicants. So I'll tell you what, Svenja, I won't forget that, and if I do, please shout at me, but right at the end we say a little bit about working in partnership, and I wonder if I should say a little bit more then, because then we'll have the context. Would that be all right?
Absolutely, yeah. I've taken a note of the
just on our last page.
Yeah, I think it might be wise at this point to kind of move on. There's quite a few more questions to get through, but something I haven't mentioned at the start, we are recording this webinar and we will make it available on our website afterwards. We're obviously getting very close to 3 o'clock with more questions coming in. So if you have to leave early, leave on time, please note that we will make this available and we'll send you the link after the webinar. Give us a few days, of course, but we will send it out. So if you can't stay, but you still want to see or hear about some of the questions and the answers, obviously, then please note that we will send that over to you.
Okay, and that's Svenja very politely telling me to speed up as well, so that's fine. I should do that. Sorry if I've rattled on, folks. Yes, so I'll tell you what, so questions 16 and 17 are very much excuse me, again, just looking at those strands that hopefully I've emphasized enough that we're that the funding is designed to support. So accessibility, and again, we're really not setting strict parameters around what we mean around accessible services. We've given a few examples there, funding, for example, and that could be the direct costs of places. It could be in order to make sure that you've got enough to look at staffing with specialist needs. It could be transport. You will know best what your local community and the groups that you're targeting need to make sure that your services can be accessed. So really, we do not have a set checklist that we're looking at to make sure you've mentioned this, that, and the other. It's a real sense of that what is needed in your local area, in your area, and for your target groups. To make sure this is a service that will be well used. And then under question 17, it's again, we're not looking at you having at the moment detailed methods, approaches, etc., about how you're actually going to make sure that you've connected really well with your priority groups. You probably will have good connections, but you will also probably want to be telling us about how you could improve those. Please just give us that reassurance that you understand how you engage with children, families working to assess need, and how you would go ahead and do that with the target groups or expand on your current activities, and then how you would want to look at assessing success alongside those families that are using the services. So that was the last, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. That was the last sort of detailed questions for your application. Was there anything there before we go on to, because this actually, there is going to be, oh gosh, only a little less than 10 minutes, but I think probably I'll just race on, because I think number 18 answers that last question about, sorry, what I'll do is answer that last question about the learning network. So what we're being funded to do is that each, well, firstly, we're asking you to bear in mind and confirm that you would agree to a nominated individual in your team delivering the service could work with children in Scotland and the other successful applicants for around 2 days a month to look at the general lessons and need for peer support, the learning, etc., that is emerging from each of the applications. And we will assign you an individual, either within Children in Scotland or from a wider network of partners, either from the sector, from some quality improvement the experts as well. We still need to work through some of the detail, and it will be very much dependent on the needs that we identify when we look at successful applications in the round. But essentially it is to create a learning network and hub around how we take the lessons, specific lessons from the applications through to our report, really, that we're all going to be working on together around how we could make more sustainable out of school care and holiday provision and services across Scotland. Then just very briefly, under 19, again, the points I mentioned about partnership, it would be great to think that we will, that you already are in close contact with the Children's Services Partnership. And if you are, it just eases things, and giving us the name of an individual that who represents the partnership, that just makes things easier when we, in terms of building up that local collaboration. But it's absolutely not essential at all. And as we say here, it's just information. It will not affect or influence our decision. And then under 20, it's please be reassured that, of course, you're going to be getting funding from a whole range of sources, I hope. But this is wanting to make sure that the particular proposal for expanding a service, for example, or introducing a new service, isn't all being fully funded from any other sources. That we need to make sure that this funding is making a particular contribution to the expansion or development of a service. But we would fully expect potentially some of these successful applications have put together funding from a range of other sources, but we're looking to sort of really make sure that this fund is contributing to a particular aspect of your service development and proposal. And then I won't go through the rest of the questions, 21 to 25, and in fact 26, they're essentially to help us with our own internal information systems. So I hope that's been helpful. As Svenja said, there are a number of other sources to get information from, and we respond quickly to emails sent direct to the Access to Childcare Fund at childrenscotland.org.uk. You have that email address, so please don't hesitate to use that if you wish. And all the very, very best of luck with this application in this round, or indeed in future rounds. So thank you so much for your interest.
Great. Well, Jackie, we have a few minutes left, and you're keen to stick around for a few more questions. Again, we will be sharing a recording of this, so if you have to dash off just now because it is 3 o'clock, then please feel free to leave the webinar, and you can see the recording and yeah, the other questions later on. Regarding question 18, while we're on that page where it says 2 days a month for a nominated individual, someone's asking whether the 2 days can be by way of virtual meetings. So
yes, I think that's absolutely realistic. Yeah, I think just bear in mind we're looking to create a peer learning hub network. So it'd be lovely to think that we could meet in person, but obviously very aware of time and travel, of course. So no, absolutely, we've got to be realistic about that. So yes, please be reassured that we'll be very practical and using that time effectively.
Another question, do we need to provide a full breakdown of costs?
No, the costs for the application, no, you don't. Those headings that I mentioned earlier, sorry, I can't remember the number particularly, but the question number, we will work with you on a spreadsheet and work with you on making sure that the information is fit for our purposes. Obviously we need to report in on spend, and also hopefully to support you, make sure that you're keeping track of your funding. But at the moment, just keep that, talk to us about the maximum amount of funding you're looking for and how broadly that would be subdivided under those headings. That's absolutely fine for now.
If you were accessing training and that was commencing straight away through the fund, would that be accepted?
Yes.
Sustainability is obviously quite an issue at the moment. Can this funding be used to sustain our services post-COVID? We have many ideas and opportunities, but getting past this current situation is a real issue at present.
Well, we're not going to, we're looking for how the priority groups that have been identified are going to be supported. And if the application is saying, well, they won't be supported if our funding stops, and this application could, then you've passed that first big hurdle. It's then going to look at how you meet the other criteria around, that the priority groups that are being supported, the accessibility, how the service will be developed and improved, etc. So the barrier to the fact that you are continuing, that you couldn't continue otherwise, is firstly, I'm really, really sorry to hear that, but also that wouldn't be a factor in preventing us funding you.
Great, thank you. Someone else is saying we could pretty much start immediately with our existing service delivery, but would like to use this program to test something a little more innovative. Could we propose a program that would evolve over time into something which we wouldn't be able to deliver without having funding allocated? I guess you touched upon that a little bit.
I think you've summed up much more succinctly than me, really, what we're looking for, questioner. So absolutely, that sounds exciting. Thank you.
Evaluation of local demand is changing rapidly due to COVID. We see a great demand in priority areas, but the landscape is shifting. So our market assessment will alter in the short term. Is this going to be acknowledged, or is this understood?
Yeah, I think, and in fact, I think if you could say that, you know, need seemed to be like this, and here was some evidence, and then March and beyond has revealed or either revealed new need or accelerated you know. So I think your awareness of COVID is going to be really helpful for us as well. And yes, so please do refer to that statement. I think it's very powerful, and that will really be helpful for us. Thank you.
Another care inspectorate question. So are you assessing the quality of delivery solely on the care inspectorate reports, or are you keen to hear partner, local authority, customer kind of like comments and recommendations?
Yeah, put those in. We were anxious not to set up a division between those who are either are or are not registered, and equally those that perhaps are just setting out and maybe haven't established more mature relationships that they can then call on from local authorities to give a reference, etc. But obviously that's really important evidence about your track record and the quality of your services. So, you know, put in all those aspects that you think are going to just add to the quality of your application.
Great, thank you. How many projects do you anticipate funding through this round, and what do you see as the average grant amount?
We don't want to set too much, but we don't. What we're going to have to balance, we want the amount of funding to be meaningful for each of the successful applicants, and meeting all the criteria that I've talked about, sustainability, learning, etc. Which is why we've set a maximum of 250,000, which I know probably over the next sort of 18 months up to 2022 isn't that much, but we have a total of $1.5 million. So we could go for just 6, or we could go for more. I don't think it will be any less than 6, but probably not a lot more than 10, if that. So I'm very aware that it is going to be fiercely competitive.
Thank you, Jackie. What do you think is the turnaround time of the application?
I'm ever so sorry. I think there might be there's a bit of echo.
So what is the turnaround time on the applications?
Okay. So the deadline is 27th. Sorry, I should know that off by heart. It's 27th, and we are expecting to tell successful applicants during the week of the 10th of August.
Thank you very much, Jackie. I think I can see Kat popping up, and that probably means that we'll need to close the webinar quite shortly, but
not quite yet. I just have a comment from Katie Smith from Scottish Government here, who unfortunately couldn't join us for unforeseen circumstances, but she's just giving us a gentle reminder that these projects are, so this funding is for new projects rather than existing projects.
Okay. So I probably overemphasized didn't emphasize enough that it's new services. So I think the question was, we want to, well, there were 2 questions, weren't there? One about how we, those services that might have to stop as a result of COVID and lack of funding, could they just continue on? And I think what I said was that, you know, you need to look at the target groups and how the services are going to meet the criteria. So I apologize if I was a bit too positive about existing service. And then I think the other one was that we're already developing service. We're already delivering services, but there's something else that we want to pilot, which my interpretation of that was that would be a new service. So I think you would, I think Kate's reminding us that new an additional service needs to be highlighted in your application if you're to be successful. So I apologise if I've misled you a little there.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. I think we're getting towards the end. There's a few more specific questions, but we'll ask some of the team members to get back in touch with you if you can. If you feel like your questions hasn't been answered, please use our email address. Jack, if you can go back to the first slide or so where the email address is mentioned, that'd be great. So you have that and you can take a note of it. So yeah, I think we got through quite a bit. Again, if you use the Menti code that's on the screen just there, so menti.com and then the code 413458, just to provide some feedback. And there is another option there to submit questions as well. But please use the email address and send the team further questions or comments. We've also received some comments about accessibility of the application form online and how to submit attachments and all of that. So we'll discuss that with the team and send information out. And if there's anything else that you need, again, please use the email address provided to get in touch. So yeah, Jackie, is there anything else you want to add, or?
No, not at all. Thank you very much. That was really helpful. I hope that was helpful for all our attendees. Thank you.
Thank you again. Thanks for engaging and sending through your comments and questions. That's been really, really helpful. And yeah, good luck, and hope to see you again soon. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.